it drove me crazy. Like I was in so much pain because it felt like there was this infinite mighty being that asked me again and again and again, what do you choose? What do you choose? What do you choose? Love or freedom? Love or freedom? Love or freedom? And I'm only going to give you this specific window of time for you to choose, and you need to choose now. And then I was like, oh, I choose love. And then immediately all the things that I would miss in the freedom part came up. So I was like, no, I can't fully commit to love. I need to go with the freedom. And then I go with the freedom. It's like, really? Do you want to live without love? And so it was these radical, these extremes for me that were almost like preventing me from making this decision, and for me having a really, really hard time and really suffering from it, because somehow there was this urgency. And I also said to myself, if you don't make a decision for either one, you get nothing.
So, for example, if it's A or B, and you really have to say A or B, but what if it is a little bit of both? Because then you have your Gemini, and then you also have this moon in Libra. So sometimes it's like, you do not have to do this or that. Perhaps you can do this and that. So it's a little bit of both until you know it's more about this harmony and equilibrium instead of like a rash, drastic decision like that. That's not really how you operate best.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Bypasses podcast. Today, 4 people here in the room. Me, Tim. Hey, Tim. And then we have Ashley and Rita, our special guest today, who gave me a very special and very magical reading today. It was an astrology reading, and I was not really very experienced with astrology readings before this episode. Now I feel much more experienced, and also kind of fell in love with the reading a little bit because it gave me so many new insights on my life and the way how to live it, how to accept myself more, and the way that I live my life. And it's really beautiful, and I think you can learn a lot from it when listening, also taking away some stuff for yourself as well. Either if you have been doing a reading before or not, it doesn't really matter. And there were some magical sharings in the end. One of Tim that was really touching, where he also shared his truth and his resonance in his body about the reading. And yeah, all in all, just a really valuable, wisdomful episode that I think you will enjoy. So keep listening to the end and let us know in the comments what you think. We will see you on the other side.
Let's start with the fundamental of your sky. And so for that, normally we start with the rising sign, which is just like a complicated way or a complicated expression for us to say east. So if the 4 of us are like time traveling to your birth time, Jannick, so like we're entering this strange machine and we're like entering into this time portal in 1994. If we were really literally landing at the place where you were born, if we imagine that it doesn't have any buildings and it's just pretty trees and open horizon, if we were staring at the east at the exact moment that you were born, like literally east, the part of the sky that would be rising, that would be coming up, is what we call the rising sign. Because the east is always coming up and the west is coming down because of the way the earth spins, right? So like the earth does this, and so it's always from here to there, always. And so the same way we can see, the sunrise and the sunset, we can see the moon rise and the moon set, we can see Mars rising, we can see literally everything. And so the slice of pizza that was appearing at east, specifically, you're born in Rendsburg?
Yeah.
Yeah. So specifically there was Virgo. You know about this, no? I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, for example, if you were born instead of Rendsburg, let's say Barcelona, it wouldn't be Virgo because Barcelona has another perspective. So, here would be like what we could see from Rendsburg, but probably in Barcelona, it would be like way behind. So in Barcelona, it would probably still be a Leo rising. So if you meet more people, if we could do like this bizarre database of people who are born at the same time, all over the world, exactly the same time, everyone will have different rising signs because we're all going to have a different sky at that moment. The sky in Barcelona is not the sky in Beirut. It's not the sky in Regensburg. It's not the sky in Tokyo. And so it's super specific. And that's why when people ask me like, oh, why do you talk so much about the rising sign? It's because it's super specific. It's a 2-hour long window in that specific geography. Sometimes it's less or more than 2 hours, but it tends to be 2 hours. So yeah. And it's very interesting how, okay, let's start with Virgo, with what this means. Does it make sense so far for you, Jannick?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Virgo is one of these signs that is truly not very well explained in today's pop culture astrology. And when we think about the origin of the signs, we really have to, for example, Ashley, you're like a Libra rising, right? And Tim, you're Sagittarius. So the three of you have signs that if we really go to the origin of the signs, they're way more fascinating than, what we talk about them today. And so in order for us to truly understand like each one's us as an ascendant or rising sign, we have to really dig deep into at that time, in that place, what did they mean? And so the origin of the signs is of these signs, there are other types of astrology in the world, comes from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, India, and Pakistan. So we're in this region. And so at that time, especially if we see it from the perspective of Virgo, at that time, this whole region, specifically from Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, which was the time of like the birth of the zodiac signs, the rivers had way more water, and the temperature was warm. So if you have water and warm temperature, it's like ideal for agriculture. And so it was really considered to be, in many like poems and scriptures, paradise on earth. And so you really have to. So Virgo, the symbol, is a young woman and a young lady, okay, like very young, but she already menstruates. And so this is very important. So it's not that she's not a child, she already menstruates. So she might be like in her teenage years or 19, 18, 17, something like this. And so when people think about Virgo, we tend to think about like this, like, oh, virgin, like Virgin Mary, white, and like, no, it's the opposite. It's it's not this like Catholic idea of purity. So that's like out of the picture. And so it's really like a young woman, she's fertile, she already bleeds, and she's in the middle of this harvest field where it's like an abundance of like trees and fruits and flowers and seeds. And so it's at the peak of harvest season, so where there's really an abundance of nature or fertility in nature. And when we're talking about either fruits or flowers, but particularly fruits in old symbols in this region, and also India, but in that whole region, it was always an indirect way of talking about the sex organs. That's why when we see the Greek statues with like the fig leaf, or it's always like, or the Adam and Eve with the apple, it's always like related to sex. And so it's again this idea, okay, she's a fertile lady, young, and already with libido, and she's like picking up fruits. So it's really this, again, this double entendre of fertility and sexuality. We'll get there. And so the first thing that we have to know is that people who are born with a Virgo rising have a tremendous necessity to, at least once per month to be surrounded by nature. And so it's like, yeah, of course you can live in the city, that's not an issue. You can, but in order for you to feel healthy, it cannot just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to train gymnastics and become an Olympic athlete. It's not sufficient. It's really like having like the feet on the ground and feeling the soil. So you need to feel like dirt, sand, or mud, or like grass and roots. So it's really because also it's an earth sign. So it means that, Jannick, like your body craves this contact to raw nature. I'm not even talking about like a pretty garden. It has to be a place that's like full of like brennnessel and nettles and like, crazy trees and just random animals walking around. So it has to feel raw. Do you have to live there? No. Is it healthy for you to at least spend a little bit of time there every month? For sure. Or at least, 1 month per year. So it's really, it's not even a craving. It's a well-being's necessity that you have to harmonize yourself, to really fit your feet on the ground and not cement. Does it make sense for you?
Yeah, it makes sense, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting for me because the way I usually use readings is I listen and then I listen to my body and I see like
Mm-hmm.
where's the resonance, and there was a lot of resonance there already. So it's beautiful to observe my body while you're talking. And one question that came up was, so that's the Virgo, but
Mm-hmm.
what part plays the rising sun? So the rising sign, sorry. So if the Virgo was in a different direction, what would be like the different influence? Because right now you were talking a lot about the Virgo, but what difference does it make in which direction the Virgo is?
So for example, if it was in west, south, north, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's really about this principle of sympathy. The principle of sympathy is like this principle of magic in occult studies where equal leads to equal, kind of like. And so if you are, it's like the microcosmos and the macrocosmos are always mirroring each other, as above, so below as above. And so if you are born in this moment, we want to see what's also born in the sky, and then you're made of the same. And so that's why we pay so much attention to the east, of course, then the west as well, but for something completely different, and the north and the south and all the directions. And so it's like, the thing that really represents what's being born in this place at that time, you and that.
Mm.
And so, of course, everyone, the four of us, will have, Virgo somewhere in the chart, in the sky. But it's not with as much intensity as it is for you. Okay. So, for example, for certain people, it might be like more the career, or others, it might be how they make money. Others, it might be their sibling, their older sibling, others, the younger sibling, others, their partner, others, their relationship to death. But for you, we're really like, it really means like who you are, not like your cousin, because we can also see your cousin in your sky, or your brother or your mother, for example, or your business partner, for instance. But for you, it's like if we're starting with you, we need to start with the rising sign. Was it clear?
Yeah, it's clear. So I was born at the same time as Virgo was born, so to say. And
Yes,
so
exactly.
I take on the qualities of the Virgo, which is about fertility and about connection to nature and fruit and harvest.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then also you said about like the sexual organs. So if that's a way to talk about the sexual organs, what how does that relate to
Yeah.
somebody like me
So
who?
it's actually even way more detailed. So this is the symbol, but then we're going to be way more specific.
Mhm.
So in reality, if we think about 3,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, a place where you can get so much food and fruits and seeds, you can make oil, you can make wine, you can make, food. So it means that it's a time where people are healthy. So, because they have foods, it's very simple. So, Virgo is also directly connects us to healing and health. And so that's why there's a tremendous physicality in the symbol of Virgo, of really like the body, and also, healing and feeling healthy. And so if we see it from, for example, from the perspective of Ayurveda, Virgo would be tridosha, so it would be like it would have a very beautiful equilibrium of all the doshas. So it's really about this idea of also health and healing. And then back then, fruits, seeds, bark, roots, that's how you prepare medicine. And so they were literally sources of medicine. It was like us going to a pharmacy or us going to the hospital, they would go to the woods. And so that's why you also see so many people in healing, either very creative fields or very healing fields with Virgo rising systematically. And even if people are more on the artistic side or creative side with Virgo, they're also like very in tune to how they feel in their bodies. So another, and because you're eating all these fruits, etc., and so the organ so associated to Virgo is also the intestines. So it's in old texts you would read like, oh, Virgo risings are picky eaters, like they really. So it's not that you have allergies, but you can really feel what's working or what's not. And so it's really like, even it's like you know something simple like, okay, black rice or just rice, but then the Virgo risings, they can really sense like the subtle details of is it working or not in your body. And so that's why an area that can speak for you in your physicality is also your digestion, your like intestinal rhythm also, and therefore, and also in Chinese medicine, it's also connected like then indirectly which is not my expertise, but it's also indirectly connected to, skin. And so that's why the skin and the intestines are both very much connected to Virgo rising. And so, if you want to do like very basic and almost very stupidifying astrology and just like say it like that, Virgo rising healers. So it's really connected to this path of healing yourself, but also healing others. Because, of course, back in the days, you would create medicine with fruits, you would create medicine with herbs and oils, and you would prepare them with plants. That's the idea. And if we go further into this, then in this metaphor of like the harvest season, it was a period where everyone would go to the fields and harvest. Everyone. So there was no social class here. Everyone would go. And then you would collect, and then you would bring it home. And then metaphorically, then we enter into the Libra because there's a sequence of signs. But here we're still in the Virgo. And so you're like collecting, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's collecting, putting things into your baskets. It's heavy. You bring it back to your tribe or your village. Okay. And so it's really connected to the idea of feeling useful. So Virgo rising, the main thing is like you need to feel useful. You need to feel like whatever you're doing, Gesundheit, is really, is really practical and shared in a way that what you're doing is not just for you, but also for others. And so it's really about, I always give this ridiculous example. Let's imagine that there was a job that was the most, like the highest paid job in the world, which was just like sticking stickers with no information, just a random sticker on oranges, like worthless. It's there, it makes no sense, but it's just like, a bug in the system, a bug in the matrix. And so people will be like, oh my God, I cannot believe you have this job. Congratulations. Like, yeah, but what's the point? And you would be, for you, the status, whatever, it's like, what the fuck? Like it doesn't give you anything. You really need to feel that wherever you're doing, it's useful. So you're not really, motivated by status or by, even prosperity as much. Of course, it's nice, but it's not really the drive. The drive is feeling useful. Whatever you're doing is useful for you, for the ecosphere, for us, for the village, for everyone. So
Can I
that's
ask you, how does that land with your current job and what you do with your Instagram?
Yeah, this is interesting. I was thinking about it because right now I feel like a lot of things that I did in my life, and the knowledge I attained is very useful to a lot of people. I built this community online, sharing my things, and did like sessions and the emotional release work, and facilitated retreats and all of that, where I was, I think, useful to the people that did it. But somehow, if I relate this back to my trauma, it felt driven by this like helplessness inside of me. So it was like, I need to help other people because I feel helpless inside. And it wasn't really about me so much. So I almost like shadowed it out. It was like this, like, what am I doing? So the more I progressed in the healing, the more I was like, I'm just helping others because I feel helpless, and I think to feel valuable and worthy, I need to help them. And it's not coming from this genuine place of like, yeah, I want to have an impact. I want to like really improve other people's lives. And then when I was really honest with myself, I was like, I don't care about those people that much. Actually, if I'm being really honest, this is horrible to say this about myself, but if I'm being really honest, I don't really care. I care more about how I feel. Like, I need to feel good. I need to feel good. And I noticed, maybe if I transcend this at some point, I'm coming back to this, like, yeah, needing to be useful or impactful for other people's lives. But right now it doesn't resonate so much, because right now I feel like I'm in a different phase where I'm like, as long as I live a good life and I make money and I'm able to do my healing, which I love to do, and feel better, and build an amazing life for my partner, for my future family. This is what matters to me, like building wealth, building health. Like you said, the health aspect really resonated a lot. For myself, it's all for myself. So right now in my life, the focus is a lot on myself and not on being useful to the society or to others. But like you asked, Ashley, there is an aspect rising and like coming more and more to the forefront, where I'm like, okay, I'm doing this Instagram. It's like, it's funny. It's been a personal growth journey where I go out there and I show myself very vulnerably. I make jokes. Maybe nobody laughs about them, and then I'm just like a fool. And I still did it, and there was so much growth in it. But now it's coming to a phase where the learning curve is decreasing, and it needs to transition into something else more impactful again. And so, yeah, I think this is where I'm at right now in this cycle.
It's interesting what you said, Jannick, because the interesting part about Virgo is that it's really not abstract. It's very down to earth. And so when we mention like feeling useful, it's feeling useful in a practical way for your life, but also for your village. So what we mean with village, it's not necessarily, the grand scale scheme of society, because then we get abstract. You don't even see these people. So, if we're thinking about the concept of 3,000 years ago, your world was your village. It's like what, 40 people, 30 perhaps, and a few goats. So it's really like the people that you see, that the people that are around you, that are really in your social tribe. So it's this. It's not really, for example, oh, I'm going to develop this political, panorama, or this political manifesto across borders, and write this poem that will transform the world. No, that's like nothing. It has to be like, oh, there's trash in the streets, and like it's in front of you, and you just get the trash. So it's the village, it's not like this abstraction and very distancing approach to being of service to nothing and to nowhere. Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear, and it resonates more. Like, this is really, that's always been important to me, to be useful, and it's also fun to be useful and impactful to the people in my immediate, like, close circle. And there is a judgment around it as well. Like, I notice that I judge this because it feels like it's too small. It's not impactful enough. So there's this part of me that's like, you need to like be this, like have a lot of status and be like really impactful and like have like reach a lot of people. And at the same time, what really like my truth is probably much more in this like closer circle, but I judge it and I'm like, no, it's not enough. It's not enough.
Yeah, but then if we think about, if we are really seeing this, if all of us are like in a space shuttle far away from Earth, and then we're like traveling with this space shuttle, like zooming in and getting closer and closer and closer to Earth, the same way we see ants or like bees or insects traveling around, and you just see like all these little ants, like, collecting sugar and bringing it to their little house. We could also see humans. And so there's no difference between insects and humans if you see it from above. And so the main impact, like the true impact that you feel like in your skin, is really the same way that a little insect is collecting, pollen and bringing it to their beehive. It's the same way that you directly are on the floor and someone, decided to leave some weird banana peels in the street, like Mario Kart. And you're like, why are these banana peels here? And you just collect them and put them in the garbage. It's not nothing. It's extremely important. And the same way we see like insects having a tremendous role in the ecosystem because they're, distributing pollen. And how much do they travel? Less than 1 kilometer? It's just like they're insects. But right now, insects are vital for the survival of the ecosphere. It's the same thing that you, with your direct accountability to your village, which is not a village. It's this direct, that's why it's so important, because of course you have, very important aspects of your sky in Gemini, which is about ideas, but then you also need to fit your feet, you need to feel your feet on the ground. So it's this combination of both. And as soon as you spend more time in these like technological ideas and space for innovation, then it's way more important for you to sometimes also feel, not all the time, but sometimes for you to feel, mud, sand, and grass. It's these two operating at the same time. And then we could ask, okay, but what is the relationship between you being a Gemini and also the Virgo? Because people could say, oh, it sounds a little bit contradictory. Not at all. They're ruled by the same planets. So the signs, they're like countries. You can see the signs like you see Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Moldavia, Macedonia. The same way you can see Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. Same principle. So they're like geographies of the sky. And so the same way we have countries and presidents or kings and queens, we also have signs and planets. So the planets rule over specific signs. It's like, you have like the president of a country, you have a planet that rules a sign. And so they're ruled by the same. So Virgo and Gemini, they're both ruled by Mercury. And so Mercury is truly the planet of using the intellect and really analyzing. And so this really gives you, also because you have your Mercury in Gemini, this capacity to analyze and to really create processes of mental thinking that really in order to achieve clarity. to really see, like, it's as if you're creating microsystems of organization, and this is not just because of the Virgo, this is really because of the Gemini as well. So it's about this invention of like this fun aspect of having the mind, but also, witnessing the mind as an observer as well. So that's why it can also lead to, a very stimulated mind of ideas and also intellect and analysis, but also this profound interest in knowing the limitations of the mind as well, and not getting, too. So one could say, oh, doesn't this sound too mental? No, because if you really navigate the mind, you also feel its limits. And so you also know what can you use it for. It's like a tool, a tool with a toolbox. If I'm using a hammer, I'm not expecting my hammer to behave like a needle, right? If I'm cooking with my giant spoon, I'm not going to use a knife, to do this if I'm cooking, So the right tool for the right context. And so that's why it tends to also, lead towards, for example, context of analytical. It's this analysis of the mind and its limitations, but also potentials. And it's also really greatly, how can I explain? It's also the beauty of the power of words, the power of silence. So knowing when to talk, knowing when to listen, it's also connected to that. So the power of communication, both in the two sides of dialogue and silence. And actually dialogue can be made in silence as well. So we could say sound and silence. And this is also achieved, a lot through meditation. So it's really like this whole, that's really how we can combine, one of the potential ways for us to combine, Gemini and Virgo. And when you ask something super interesting, which is, okay, I have Virgo there, but what if I had Virgo somewhere else? Okay, but then we can see, for example, Gemini, when you were born, was on top of your head, okay, like literally 90 degrees on top of you. And so what do we put normally on top of our heads? A hat. And back in the days, hats were the indication of our careers. If I was distributing milk, I have a different hat. If I'm the king, I have a different hat. If I'm a police officer, different hat. So they would look at the head and know, oh, you have this hat. It means that you are a chef. And so this on top of our head, it indicates our career. And you have Gemini there, which means that most likely you will always combine two careers at least. Because Gemini is one of the few signs, there are only two, that is in the plural form. So it's this and that. So Gemini in Latin, and I think it's Latin, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not. It's, not one twin, it's twins. So it's you doing two things. You do not have to do one. It doesn't make sense. Because you have your sun in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, like the top 90 degrees on top of your head was Gemini. So it's always about simultaneously doing two things at the same time, and they can feed each other off. They can nourish each other. So that's why, for example, the symbol of, so the symbol of Aries is the head, the symbol of Taurus is like the jaw and the throat, and the symbol of Gemini is like the scapula, then like the arms and the hands and the lungs. And so instead of one, here we have two, right? So it's really about two things and not just one. And so so this is the specificity of you having Gemini here, on top. So Gemini would be south when you were born, for example. But yeah, that's a very specific. So it's not, so, and some people ask, oh, but is it, will I lose myself? Or like, am I always like, is it messy if I'm always like doing many things at the same time? Well, for you, it's your strength. So why should it be seen as a disadvantage? Like in a post-capitalism world where people want to, force people to just do one thing, as machines, you're like, wait a minute, no, I'm going to do 2 or 3 or 5. So it's really about juggling different things that apparently they don't have anything in common, but they have something in common. The common denominator is you. And it could be something as random as like making perfume, being super interested in sourdough, and also, training dogs. And you do the 3 things. And then somehow, all of a sudden, it's like you're opening a bakery and dogs can enter and it smells amazing. And you're making a perfume that smells like bread. So it's like the integration of all your crazy sides into one thing, in a way. How do you see this in you, like this Gemini part?
Yeah, this is really beautiful for me to hear because, like you said, there is this push in this society towards focusing and specializing
Yeah.
on one thing, but I've never really felt that. And just recently, I'm trying to find it right now. Yeah, recently I was very inspired on one of my last days in Thailand, and I wrote down some things about myself, about my life, about where I want to go. And I wrote down that I'm in German. I am a Zusammenbringer, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm like someone who brings things together.
Yeah.
And this is really what I felt. It was like, for example, with my online comedy, and then I do a community about healing, and this is my funnel, and people tell me what the fuck is this funnel? It doesn't make any sense. Why would people who think German jokes are funny sign up to a healing community?
Mm-hmm.
And some people did, and somehow like it brought us together, and I filled a retreat with that. And then they took psychedelics, and I did like psychedelics and comedy about Germany and healing together. And
Yeah.
it created something really special and unique. And I think this is what creativity is about too. It's about combining two things that haven't ever been combined before and making it something new, something special, something out of the box that others weren't able to think of. And I really see myself in this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting what you said about like, what the hell does comedy have to do with like this and that and that? But it's really like, so in the old texts, the main word that was used to describe this constellation that you have is weaving. And so when we're weaving, it has like, it's this with that, and it's like, we're putting all of that together, and it's like one, even though it's like separated strands of like fabric. And so we also, so besides weaving, we can also see it as braiding. Like, I always think about this example. If you think about one piece of hair, it's quite fragile. But then if you start braiding the hair all in one, you do it like this and it's super strong. And so because it's interwoven, right? And so it's these, some people, the problematic, not yours, perhaps you went through a journey where this is already, you already liberated yourself from this question. But people with your constellation might ask, oh, but it's super different. What I do doesn't make sense. Like, I do this and that. Should I have 2 websites? Should I have 2 Instagram accounts? Should I, should these people know that I know also do that? Of course, because you have to integrate those 2 sides in one. It's the strength and not, a disadvantage point. It's really like when we think about making perfume, which is another example for your constellation, is, sometimes the individual scents are like kind of disgusting, but combined, they work. Or also like juggling. When we think about Gemini with the hands, we have 2 hands, not 1 hand. And so this small constellation in Gemini that you have, it's really like, a juggler with all these things and combining them all into one juggling act. And so it's fun because you have 10 eggs or, 15 little balls. If you just had, one object and you're juggling one object, it's the most boring thing on earth. Who the hell wants to watch that? Like, oh, just, I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but if you have like a bunch and you know how to combine all of that, it's really deeply entertaining to watch. And it's also amazing. It shows a lot of dexterity. And then we're not saying, oh, he's juggling one banana, one lemon, one egg. And like, no one cares about individual objects anymore. We care about how you integrate them all into one crazy thing, you know? And when we see, like, let's get into like timing. When we see like the timing where this career started to get really interesting, there were two periods, we can say, recently. One was a little bit after COVID. So we're talking about, let me just calculate, around the middle of 2020. Let me see. The middle of 2020, 21 until early days of 22. So that was like perhaps a big career change, or something like more like you discovering that you might want to go in a different direction. And then the other period that was also super important was since May last year. So since May 2024. So those two. So perhaps the
That's
first one was
crazy.
like, the first one was like, oh, this is changing. And then the second period that we talked about since May, it's like, oh, this is working, And so it's like, again, getting to the fruit aspect. It's when you're like, oh, now I can collect some fruits. This is actually really working. And so does it mean that you might have had like all the financial, benefits that you wanted? Not yet, but at least career-wise, it was getting interesting. And then now from June onwards, and it's a period of at least a year, it's when you start like, it will get more comfortable regarding money because you already have a name. One thing leads to another. It's like it's a process, So what happened in those years?
Yeah, it's really aligned. So the first period that you mentioned after COVID was really meaningful because I actually changed my career from IT into psychedelics, basically. So basically moving from doing product management and working as a developer in IT, moving to working for a company freelance in Thailand that does psychedelic retreats and online coaching. So it's a complete change, and it is a change into the world where I belong.
Mm-hmm.
And and then in May, this is exactly the month where I started my Instagram, and it started to blow up in like 1 month. Last year in May, I started, and in 1 month, I made 100K followers, and this whole thing started. So it's crazy how aligned this is. Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is really interesting. I'm curious to see, like, when you started working with, psychedelic journeys and things like that, which type of psychedelics were you working with?
Mushrooms.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So,
But I wasn't working so much with the mushroom itself, but the company that I worked for was. So, and then I specialized more into the coaching, but of course there was always a close combination. Like I started to use psychedelics on my healing journey more, mostly mushrooms and acid. And I also met a lot more people in the field, and the clients that we had were also familiar with the substances.
yeah. I'm asking because, systematically, we tend to see Virgo risings connected to psychedelics, particularly ones that come from a natural origin, which, of course, we can debate every psychedelic comes from natural origin. I know, but they tend to have a more direct association to them. Because they're basically coming from plants. If they don't come from plants, they come from fungi. When we extract the components. So that's why. So what would you like to know regarding, the next cycles, like the next year? What are you interested in knowing?
Yeah, so you mentioned June. Was that related to this year or last year? Like
This
after
year,
this year, June.
from actually, I mean, I think we talked about June in general. We've already had this conversation, the others, not you, Jannick. But in June is an interesting month because it's not going to be the 1st of June, okay? Like, no. But it's a long period that will start from June that is really about you checking, okay, now you know what you do, check. So how do you want to put that into your financial life? And so it's really about not, it's really about then, the fruits of work. So not necessarily working more at all, but just getting paid, basically. And so it's really a moment of financial prosperity, deeply connected to the fact that you're doing multiple things at the same time. So from June onwards, there's this discovery of, okay, I do A, B, and C. And so what is the combination of all these sources of different income? Like one might be every 3 months, other might be every week, the other might be tiny payments every day. And it's different, but then combined, it makes an interesting cake. That's the idea with this period that goes at least, but I'm just giving a short period, being more descriptive, which is June 2025 until July 2026. You're really discovering this idea of combining different sources of income. Even if you just had one job, it would still be possible. But yeah, the fact that you have multiple strengthens this. And also, all of this is possible because, you're coming from a long period since 2023, but then, so it started in March 2023, continues 24, 25, 26, and then it got more intense since August, September last year, and then now, which is really about other people and people in general. So it's also a time where, not just talking about so much about work, but also it's also the time where you're really discovering your friends, your friendships, love, and making it feel very solid. So it's really about structured, solid partnerships and connections and people, and friends. And so it's not just about the usual gang of friends, like the friends you've always had since kindergarten. It's really about also since 2023, and we're already in 25, there are like new people entering your life that really feel that they've either been, it feels like you've met them a long time ago, even though you didn't. And it also feels that that they really feel like they're part of you, even when you're like 102 years old. So it's these friendships that are not so ephemeral, but they're here to stay. And so from 2023, and then an extra layer of more intensity since August, September. And then it's like continuing, So how do you feel with friends? And love, by the way.
Yeah, it's that resonates with me as well. Friendship has been a topic, especially in the last month, especially this year, where especially male friendships, where I started facilitating men's circles and really deepening my connection to other men, because it has been something that I was like, a part of me was afraid of fully like showing myself. I was always really good at like being friends with women and being intimate, but also like not only sexual, but also like in conversations and with my emotions, being intimate with women felt very safe. And very fluid and like easy for me. But then with men, there was always this like blockage. This like something's here that's like in the way. And ever since I've started easing into that, I connect more to my own masculinity, but also connect more to male friends and really don't see them as just people who are there and maybe even who add extra effort into my life because like I have to be there for them and they don't really create any value for me, but actually really just feeling connection, like in connection with them as well. And then love-wise, I'm in a very happy relationship at the moment, and since about 7 or 8 months, so like last year, July, August.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it feels really nice and could be the person for me that stays. Yeah.
Yeah, because astrologically, the period that we can see is August, September
Mhm.
regarding love. Of course, you can say it's July, but then it's like there's something about August that makes it feel a little bit stronger.
Yeah, and in August we decided to call this a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And I guess that this whole subject of like also friendships is really what you were describing about like male friendships is really an interesting subject for, not just male, but friendships in general is really an interesting subject for all of us, I would say. Is there anything that's, Tim or Ashley, that you want to add to that?
About male friendships?
Yeah. When Jannick was saying that, did something come
I
to
mean,
you?
I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, currently, it's also a time where I had this longing to be around not only conscious men, but also in the best case men that I can laugh with in the one moment and cry with in the next, and just talk shit in one moment and talk about deep stuff in the next. And there was a phase of longing and then the phase of searching, and now I'm blessed with like a small circle of men that I hold really dear to my heart and that fulfill my standards also. And that feels really amazing. Like it's scratching an itch that I had for a long time. And I learned that I don't need a lot of friends. I just need the ones that I choose to be within the realms of my standards of what I want in a friendship. And also just interesting and fun people to be around. And so I can relate with what Jannick is saying. It's not easy to find men that are like that, I think.
Yeah. And there's these two aspects to it. Like the one aspect that you just shared about like really having this close circle of men that are conscious and in all these qualities that you mentioned. But then on the other hand, also in every interaction with another man to see this common like masculine energy that they hold and that you hold, and that thing that connects you as brothers. And this term like brothers is a bit overused, I think, in the spiritual world. It's like everybody is a brother of each other, but on one hand it's overused, and on the other hand I know the origins or the truth in this, because or I can sense it, because it has changed to me how I meet other men. Before, maybe it was competition, or it was like who's the alpha, who's stronger, who's better at that, who's better at that. But then to come more into this sense of like bodily sense of brotherhood, where you meet another man and you're like, yeah, we are in this together, and like this connects us. Also our masculinity also connects us. So there's both aspects to me that changed. One is the close friend circle, the other one is men in general and how connected I feel to them.
Thank you for sharing that. Rita, is there anything that you've had sessions with me, you've had sessions with Ashley. Is there anything that you can see in Jannick's chart that is in some way, shape, or form related to our dynamic? I would be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, for sure. So, Ashley, which year were you born?
In 92.
Yeah. I know it was different from 94. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a common denominator in all of you, which is how much communication comes in your skies, in all of yours. And so also like the power of words. But it's like different expressions, of course. Yeah, but that's obvious. But it's really an interesting point of union. Let me calculate something here. So this is here. That's over there. And let me get your charts because I have them drawn. Just a second.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, while she does that, it's so. I can just share maybe a little bit about my experience with the reading, because I feel like I'm really I'm not skeptical. I'm open, but at the same time, I'm not overly like hyped or convinced that these readings are like even like a thing or the thing that will help me in my life. But still, there was a lot of resonance and things that felt really aligned that I listened to today. And I just think it's always so beautiful to just trust your body. Always listen to your body. It's always the the truth always lays there. So you listen to somebody, you feel the resonance, and I shared about it, and then you see how your body reacts. And yeah, it's really magical, I feel like.
Yeah. Whenever I have read, like I was the same. I was on Adam. I'm still. I was just at a party and people were like talking about astrology the whole time, and they had nothing else to talk about. And like, oh yeah, that's your Virgo speaking, and oh yeah, you're so Leo, and but I'm just like, oh my god, this is like so. It's like in some, like a part of me is really annoyed by that. But when when I listen to Rita and what she's saying, I'm doing it the same way as you do, Jannick. I'm just hearing with my heart, with my body, and I see what resonates. And most of the time, it's like almost everything is super on point, and I've passed the point where I was like, oh, I need to explain this, or why is this? I don't, at this point, I don't even want a explanation. I just I talked to Rita. Everything that she so far predicted was coming true. I feel super seen by her, sometimes more than coaches that I pay to help me. So it's really amazing, and to me, magical, mystical, and I like having this in my life.
Yeah, I can chime in that everything Rita's mentioned, and been a year nearly since we had our first call.
Yeah.
Like, even getting trapped in Bali and things like this, like was kind of predicted. And
How did she predict that? That you got
she
trapped
said
in Bali?
that in the company that we worked in, that there would be issues with money and power around September time.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, don't go there, and I still went.
Yeah. So when we see the three of you, I want to draw this and send you a print, Tim and Ashley, and then you can send to Jannick, because it's really interesting to see like on text, like on a paper, and not just be like, oh, okay, and then you don't see it. The three of you have some of the most important planets in either one or another part of the sky, that they're together. They're like one. It's like the left arm or the right arm. They're just arms. Okay, doesn't matter if it's one side or the other. It's the same area, and so it's all about ideas, knowledge, communication. Ideas, knowledge, communication. It's all connected to this. And then it's, in old times, they would say it's also connected to short time traveling or long time traveling, or like short trips or longer trips. So it's also connected to foreign countries. So the same area for like languages, it's also the same area for traveling. It makes sense, because why would we speak another language? We speak another language if we need to travel. And if you want to travel at that time, it would be practical if you would speak some other language. So the three of you have some of the most important aspects there. And I mean, we could discuss, oh, everyone works in communication. Well, not really. If I'm baking bread, I'm not really talking to, dough and sourdough, or if I'm like, a Formula One driver, it's not, I mean, that's nice if you use nice words. Will you win Tokyo in this weekend? No. So it's really about this, always this immersion into ideas, words, communication, knowledge, investigation, going deeper. And so it's really about, the magical power of speaking and also listening, both. So it's the magic, it's this portal that really uses the mouth. And of course, it's connected to writing as well, or reading. But for the three of you, it doesn't feel sufficient to just write or read. You have to open your mouth. So it has to come from here. So, it could be like, oh, but it could be just three journalists or three scientific researchers or three writers. Not really. Yeah, but then the three of you would still have to speak. So I think that's a really, a common element. And of course, this would take me longer time to sit down and really think about this, about other common elements, but this is a big one, is really like the understanding that the three of you have of the power of words. Do you like, how do you see this? Of course, this is my way of explaining, but how do you guys see that? Like, do you see that in the three of you? Like, do you see that?
I mean, we have a podcast, so
Yeah, that's true.
it's true. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's true. That's cute.
Yeah. We have a pod. It's cute. We're like little friends meeting at the kindergarten or in the play area. But it's I think it's. I mean, Ashley is a teacher. I obviously work with words. Jannick also works in words in a sense that your comedy is you're making fun of language. So it's and we have the podcast, so there's definitely correlates there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So regarding more like practical, down to earth elements that are useful for your life, in India, they're like the masters of doing this. Not just, but they're really good with that. And so they can see a chart, a sky, and be like, and say like the most specific things that you can do. And so one of them is quite unique, because one of the main symbols of your like constellations is the bed. And so it might sound ridiculous, but if you would go to an Indian astrologer, they would be like immediately like, Jannick, you need to make your bed every day. Your bed has to be super clean. Don't have like junk underneath your bed. Like, oh, I'm going to keep like my ski clothes under my bed. No, clean. So it has to have like, your bed is your temple. Also, in terms of, the bed is seen as like a temple of pleasure, also, not just of rest. And so it's really very important, not just because of your sleep, but also because of literally like your intimate sensual life. So the room So the place where you would sleep and the bed are areas where if you're like feeling a bit messy or feeling a bit confused, if you organize your room, if you really clean your bed, if you really have like, if you invest in your bed, you invest in your life. So, and in yourself. And so, for example, if you know, if it's also about sometimes if you want to have a different perspective, just change the direction of your bed. I know this sounds very strange, especially for Westerners, but it's really, everyone has their symbol. This is yours. So the bed and the bedroom, those are two. What else is very very interesting or specific? Something that's super interesting in your moon is the type of moon that you have really gives you or really shows, how can I explain? Visual perception of proportions, and even gives you like this architectural, how can I explain, architectural sensibility, like that. And so it indicates that one day, either you can get a van and actually just redo it all and just it's an amazing van, or if you ever buy a property, you have a very good chart to actually, even if the property is done, it's fully furnished and whatever, or not furnished, but it's perfect according to everyone. Even if you're not an architect or not a civil engineer, if you enter into the home and you see potential, feel free to change the home inside. Like, oh, if I take out this wall and I put this here, then the kitchen has this light, and then da-da-da. And this improves the market value of any property that's in your hands. So feel free to always, if you have a property in your hands, one day, if you ever buy it, feel free to change it inside. Not, I know it's very tiring to do it, but you really can see the potential of places inside. Is it clear? I know this is super specific.
It's super specific. That's so interesting. Yeah. And I will probably never forget.
Yeah, because it's so strange, right? It's not a talent that we don't really associate this as something, but it's really something that you're very good at. It's really understanding space and how to maneuver inside space, inside a home,
Yeah.
or inside a house.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is really interesting is what helps me or supports me in making good decisions, because I feel like everybody has their own way of making decisions. Some people make the best decisions, they would go for a walk. Some people need to do a workout. Some people need to just listen to their gut. Some people need to think about it for a week. Does my chart say anything about how to make good decisions for my life?
That's a very, very interesting question. Okay, the first thing is for sure trying to feel like Earth. So, and we could say like, oh, Rita, that's the most cliche I've ever heard. It's like, no, other people are like the ocean. Other people is like something else. For you, it's really like, if you really like just touch Earth, it does something. And we could say, oh, it does something to everyone. Yeah, but perhaps it does something more to you. So that's the first thing. Not necessarily to achieve the decision, but to achieve a neutral state. So it just creates, gives you neutrality. So that's the first thing. So somehow, either contact, herbs or plants or trees, or, gardening in your house, or go, not really for a walk, unless it's really a natural place. Of course, if we live in the city, it's not possible, but there are also trees. So if there's grass, just take off your shoes. So that would be one thing. And then regarding achieving, how to how to decide, you also have something very interesting. Again, this moon in Libra. So the moon, people say, oh, the moon is like emotions. Not really. So the moon reflects the sun, the light of the sun. So it's how do we reflect about what's happening outside, inside. And so it's not just emotions, it's also thoughts. So it's both. And so when it's in Libra, it indicates like it's about, you don't have to go for extremes. You really operate well when you create a balance, an equilibrium. An equilibrium point is is utopical. We will never achieve an equilibrium point, a perfect one. That's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. But it's really about balancing. So, for example, if it's A or B, and you really have to say A or B, but what if it is a little bit of both? Because then you have your Gemini, and then you also have this moon in Libra. So sometimes it's like you do not have to do this or that. Perhaps you can do this and that. So it's like a little bit of both until it's more about this harmony and equilibrium instead of like a rash, drastic decision like that. That's not really how you operate best.
Mm.
And so another very, very interesting thing about how you achieve a decision, like your decision-making process, this is really specific. Again, when we're seeing your constellations, your little stars, which are not the signs, the little stars are way smaller than the sign. So this one that's really about decision-making is a star that is metaphorically very much connected to people whose job is to cut jewelry. Okay, it's super specific. I'm not saying you're doing this. It's saying this is a metaphor. And so if you see like a stone, like, okay, you have a giant, beautiful gemstone, like lapis lazuli, whatever it is. And so if you're going to cut it, you need to see it from every angle, Okay, now I don't have water. So you can do like this, to really see how am I going to cut this. And the people that really do this, they're really well paid because it's a very high responsibility job. You want to cut it in the best way in order for us to make jewelry. And out of this giant stone, we can make like lots of different rings, lots of different things, And so you need to see this 360. And so it's also the same way you see an issue. Let's really see all the angles. And it's not like you're over analyzing. You're not. Because then it's like, paralysis by analysis, which we could say it's a little theme of Virgo, but it's really about, okay, when you really see it from, different angles, upside down, top up, or bottom up, or, the opposite, it's really an interesting. So sometimes if you invert the order of the decision, it's interesting for you to see, all the angles. So it's really about sometimes inverting the direction of the decision itself.
Mm.
Was it clear?
Yeah, it's very clear. And it's especially the first part that you said was really, wow, that really touched me because I can share one of my last psychedelic journeys on mushrooms, like a high dose, heroic dose. It was exactly about this decision making, one or the other. And in hindsight, analyzing the trip, I would say it was about love versus freedom, as if somehow I have to choose one or the other. And it drove me crazy. Like I was in so much pain because it felt like there was this infinite mighty being that asked me again and again and again, what do you choose? What do you choose? What do you choose? Love or freedom? Love or freedom? Love or freedom? And I'm only going to give you this specific window of time for you to choose, and you need to choose now. And then I was like, oh, I choose love. And then immediately all the things that I would miss in the freedom part came up. So I was like, no, I can't fully commit to love. I need to I go with the freedom. And then I go with the freedom. It's like, really, do you want to live without love? And so it was these radical, these extremes for me that were almost like preventing me from making this decision, and for me having a really, really hard time and really suffering from it, because somehow there was this urgency. And I also said to myself, if you don't make a decision for either one, you get nothing.
Mm.
Get none of it. And I was in despair, and I suffered so much. I was like, this is a symbol for my whole life. I will never, if I can make a decision now, I will never be able to make this decision. And I will always be stuck in between. It's like, it reminded me of my parents who got divorced. And I was like, I have to decide between my father and my mother. I have to decide between this job and that. I have to decide. And I can't. I want to stay in the middle always and not commit. And I felt like this was such a weakness of mine and now with the things you said about the Gemini, but also about decision making, a little bit of that. Yes, you could say, no, that's not the solution. You need to commit to something in order to be fully in, but it's not who I am. I'm not the person who goes fully in 100%. I go with this a bit and this a bit, and I combine it, and I feel very comfortable there. And maybe it's time to accept myself for that and love myself for that, instead of constantly judging that I'm not like that person who goes 100% in, because that's not how I function.
Yeah, it's really when we see philosophically the notion of aesthetics and beauty, it's so much connected to equilibrium, about harmony. And so it's way more how you make decisions. It's about it's a state of harmony. And the polar opposites are like this, so they're completely not harmonious. And it's really it really goes against you. And the other very unique thing is the way for you to make decisions is if you see them. When you visualize, literally when you see, I'm not saying, oh, you see the issue. No. When you use your eyes to see what's going on, your eyes, I'm not saying a metaphor. When you use your eyes to see, this is how you make a decision. So either writing and making graphics, or really when you need, so it's like you're cutting the jewelry, the cutting the stone. It's not an abstraction. The stone is here, and this stone is different from that one. So you need to cut this one differently. You need to see. So it's interesting how you said with with the heroic dose, how it was I'm not saying it was super visual. I don't know, because I wasn't there, but it's when you see it, that's how you decide. So try to incorporate your eyes as much as you can when you need to make a decision. Okay, some people could be something else. Could be touch, could be, digestion, could be, listening. For you, it's seeing. Try to see. Find ways to incorporate your vision into the decision. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit abstract what I'm telling you, but it's that.
Yeah. It's also, it reminds me of something else. I feel like where I function best is in heights. So when I'm up there, in a plane or on the mountains, or really up there. And it might be because I can see everything clearly from above. It's almost like this zooming out, this bird's perspective, eagle perspective. It's also the eagle is also an animal I really resonate with. He's above all and watches everything and then makes this decision by seeing it all.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, the eagle is really the animal that we associate to eyes. right? It's the birds are really the animal that we associate to vision. I guess, Tim, that this is also something that's, you with your mythological studies or your symbolic studies, it's something that you're also aware, I imagine.
Yeah. And Tim, maybe we want to like round this up with maybe you giving like just a little last impression of, I mean, you know me and you know Rita, you know the readings. It's like, how does this reading land for you? Is there anything that you noticed that resonated with you in your body that stood out? Because I love to use the body as an instrument for truth and a finder of truth. So the more bodies we involve, the more information we get. And I think you're currently on mute.
Oh, what stood out most for me was when you talked about the decision making part, that you always have to feel like you're having to make decisions, but then also claiming that making a decision or like being fixed on something is maybe just not the way to be, right? Because that's also just a concept. Like, who's telling, there's this weird thing of, it's not weird, like for most people it works, but there's this standard, or like this fixed star that people bring up, that yes, you shouldn't suffer from decision paralysis, and you should find one thing and then do it, and if you don't, you have like some sort of issue, you're like jumpy or whatever, and that it's just something that you need to fix. But I think it's super powerful to also see the gift in that, because I think you're super creative, and you're it's actually a skill that you have, because if somebody makes a decision, he or she is trying to fix something inside of a box that this thing cannot get out of. So for example, if you choose one if you choose one job and you're saying, that's my decision and I'm not going to change that, then you're going to be that for the rest of your life. And if you're going to be just one thing for the rest of your life, one thing is for sure, and that is that you have very little adventure within you. And there's this eagle symbol. I see you in that, because and also the eye, like having the eyes, like because the eye is also a symbol for consciousness and seeing and being aware. And then the eagle is flying really, really high, almost like he's standing on a tower. But he's also really he has a great ability to be flexible. He can fall towards the ground and grab a mouse and be really, really fast, but he can also just gently, he's not thinking probably, but he's just gently there. And then when he has the goal, he's attacking. He makes a decision when his impulses tell him to. He's not ruminating about whatever. He's like watching the ground. And when a mouse appears, maybe he checks in if he's hungry or not, or whatever, and then he strikes. So there's a great freedom within that, and that is, I think, always like a super powerful thing, is to just stop pathologizing ourselves and see whatever wounds we carry as a gift. And I'm seeing that myself. Like, I've recently like uncovered some people pleasing tendencies in me, and I'm like, I talked to a coach about it, and he said, like, you're so hard on yourself. Like, this is not people pleasing. Yes, you could say it is, and you could start making up a whole story around how that is like making your life worse or whatever. Or you can just say, this is a gift. Like, you truly care for people. You truly develop the ability to be close to people, to feel people, to be empathetic. And what, like, viewed through that lens, is like, why would I let that go? Why would I ever let go my freedom of not having to make a decision. So many people are suffering from making decisions all the time, and you chose a life where you don't have to, and apparently it's going really well because of that wound.
Yeah.
Because you live a life where you're super free, you can live wherever you want, you're not stuck in that IT job, which is like, IT is like super narrow, I would say. And now you're just, you're a comedian traveling the world. There's, that's pretty awesome. And that's, if that is coming from a wound, then I would question if it was a wound in the first place.
Mm.
And that's with all the, there is trauma that needs to be treated. Yes. There's like tremendous misery that you can't just brush over with, it's your gift. Like, some life can be really, really dark, but I feel like you've been through the darkness already. And it's time for you to acknowledge that, the wounds are, the wounds have healed, and now they're glowing and showing you the way. And that's what I picked up on. And even talking to you like that, you could say that, oh, he's like super in his, he's whatever. But I know that when I talk like this, I have the ability to tremendously touch people. And this is also why I coach, and this is also why I hold people in processes like this. And I only have gotten to a place where I can talk in a way that is as touching as it is now, through going through all of my shit. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here and knowing that, that it might sound inflated, I don't care, that, I am touched by what I'm saying, because I know what you need to hear. I know what I've gotten to know you. I can feel you on a deep level. And this is not people pleasing. This is me turning this, I'm too much affiliated with other people's feelings. No, I'm not. It's how I treat the fact that I'm so open to other people. And it's a matter of what I'm doing with that. And this is, maybe the swing was a bit big, but this is what was coming up to me. And this is also what working with Rita is so cool with. It's like, it's giving me that feeling of normalizing. Something is becoming normal that I always found weird, or something like that. Like, I feel very held and very accepted and bestätigt, confirmed in my life.
Accepted also, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what your talk was about, which was really touching. It's about acceptance, non-pathologizing, radical unshaming of who you are, of our wounds, and seeing them as a gift. And this is thriving also to me. Like, you go into the darkness, but then you also thrive. And you said, why would I ever have to let go of my people-pleasing tendencies? People-pleasing, that's already a word that holds so much judgment and shame in of itself. And like we talked about in the last episode, maybe the very act of accepting it fully and embracing it and seeing the gift in it is the letting go process of the shadow. It is that itself. So it's not about becoming rid of it. It's about seeing the gift and acceptance. And I think a lot of the reading today by Rita, for me also, was exactly about this. Wow, I feel seen in that. It makes so much sense why I am like that. And it's a gift, and I can use it, and I don't need to be somebody else. It's a lot. You need to be somebody else when you suffer, but you don't need to be somebody else. You are you with your own strength. And this is so cliche, and it can be printed on a postcard. But when you listen to this episode, I think you get a real felt sense of it, of this, like, yes, this is how I operate. Why change it if this is how I operate? And this is my gift and my strength, like Tim just said.
Amazing. I think that's a really cool point where we can wrap this episode up. I'm gonna leave the last words to Jannick and Rita. And we hope you enjoyed this episode.
For sure. I certainly did. It was like, of course, I would have loved if it was like also more with you and Ashley. But also it was fun to do the reading in this context, which is also very unique for me. I've never done a public reading, even if it was like a very short, condensed version. It's a lot of fun also to have like this, not just two witnesses, but also two pillars they are holding, the encounter. So that's fun. It's it's the village. So yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah, truly.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you
Yes.
for this.
Thank you so
Rita.
much, Rita, for your openness and your wisdom. And I can see your superpowers definitely. And I hope you can share this gift with as many people as possible. And thank you for coming on this podcast. Thank you to all of you at home listening. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know in the comments what you think about the readings and how it resonates with you. I'm really interested in that. And subscribe to our channel. Give us a rating if you like this podcast, if you like this episode. And we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.